Welcome to our program on Kardec Radio. And now, here's our host, Dr. Vanessa Anceloni.
Welcome, dear listener, to Kardec Radio. Today, we are very joyful in our hearts because we are honored with the presence of Dr. Renae Reinardy. She's going to be here with us, enlightening our minds regarding something that happens so often nowadays, a specific type of obsessive-compulsive disorder, hoarding. Most often, people say and they claim they are not hoarders. Even when they are to the extreme levels of hoarding, we'll be amazed that people say they're not hoarders. And if they say they are, most often they don't know how to get out of it. Why does this happen? We're going to understand more of this as we talk to Dr. Reinardy, who will be here very soon talking to us. In the meantime, we want to remind you, if you want to talk to her, you can call us at 858-769-4705, or you can also log on to Blog Talk Radio / at Kardec Radio Station, and in the chat room we'll have the possibility of talking to you as well and relaying your question to Dr. Reinardy. Or you can email kardecradio@gmail.com and we will have access to your request. Or go to our website, kardecradio.com. There's a contact form. It goes directly to our system, and we'll get to know of your comment or your question to Dr. Reinardy and ourselves. By the way, we're very joyful and grateful to all the listeners throughout the world. We finally reached 58 countries in this world which have Kardec Radio listeners. The most recent one is Morocco. And welcome aboard, Moroccan listeners. We are here for you as well. As you know, Kardec Radio is here to nourish our souls. It's a very different radio. We're not here for money. We don't charge anything for anything we do. On the contrary, we sponsor it fully. And the reason why we do it is because there are so many good things happening around the world. And we need to shift the pattern, the dynamics of our radio, make it more inspirational, make it more nourishing to the souls of everyone, because news nowadays have been quite challenging, right? And here you feel at home. You feel that we're bringing to you the good news of good people that are doing amazing things, like Dr. Reinardy. She's here to help us understand more about this hoarding, which is, she's going to explain us more, but let's say a form of pathological attachment. And if we go to Kardec in the Spirit's book, answer to question 895, attachment to material things is a notorious indication of difficulty of the soul, because the more humans are attached to things in this world, the less they understand their true destiny. Through selflessness, however, they show that they see the future from a more evolved point of view. We're not here to judge. No, we're not here to tell those who feel like they are hoarders or hoarders in potential that they are inferior. No, not at all. Because as we know, if we're not in this life, we probably were in previous lives. The point is therapeutic. We want to get out of this situation. And talking about therapy, you know, today we have a new segment that is going to be broadcast here. The Master in Education, Bernadette Leal from California, she's going to be here with us every Saturday possible. Good news about spirituality for kids and youth. Today she's going to teach parents how to teach their kids to pray. A question that has been made from parents throughout this country in the United States of America, probably in other countries as well. And now we are going to have a segment directing to tips and hints to parents and educators through Bernadette Leal in the segment that we called Yes, Youth education on spirituality. And we have this and much more for you. By the way, go to the Spirit Side of Baltimore's website /campaign. On the new campaign, I honor my parents, and share why you honor your parents and sometimes why you have difficult times also honoring parents. Because honoring parents is a matter of civilization. We need to respect, be reverent, kind to our parents, caring to them as well. Well, dear listeners, we have so much to share. But today, let us focus on the therapy for hoarding. And we are honored to have here with us Dr. Renae Reinardy, who is a PsyD-LP. She's trained in cognitive behavioral therapy and theory. And with her approach, she has been teaching skills to manage and eliminate symptoms of obsessive compulsive disorders. She has been the co-founder and president of the OCD Twin Cities. You can access much of her information at lakesidecenter.org. And she has been interviewed extensively at Good Morning America, Dateline NBC, and featured in many programs at A&E Hoarders. And she has her DVD available to guide people on specifically hoarding. And you can access that at Amazon.com. We'll talk about this and much more. Before we talk about this and bring her in the line to talk to us here, we're going to kickstart the show today with a most beautiful message, a message that will serve the purpose of boosting joy in our hearts. It's actually named Joy, and it is in the CD Enlightening Messages, as well as a book by the Spiritist Society of Baltimore. Just go to its bookstore and you have access to it. Let us listen to this. Go to our first break. When we're back, Dr. Reinardy is going to be here with us. Let us listen.
Joy. Joy is the song of the hours when God caresses your passage through the world. Everywhere flowers bloom as smiles of nature, and the wind combs the field's hair with resting music. The water from the fountain is liquefied care in earth's heart, and the small golden grain of sand is a message of joy from the ground. Do not allow, therefore, that your difficulty transforms itself into numbing sadness for others. Even if everything appears to conspire against the happiness that you await, lift your eyes to the smiling face of life that envelops you, and bolster joy wherever you go. Bless and serve always, even among tears. The rose, although subjugated by thorns, still offers its perfume, and sunrise awaits generously for the night to finish in order to renew itself. Daily, in a party of love and light.
We will return to our program after these messages.
Kardec Radio, live every Saturday at 11 a.m.
Nourish your soul with Kardec Radio.
The International Spiritist Council is organizing and promoting the 7th World Spiritist Congress, which will be held in Havana, Cuba on March 23rd through the 25th of 2013. The Congress theme will be Charity and Spiritual Education in Building a World of Peace. 150 years of the Gospel according to Spiritism. For more information, please visit www.7cem.org.
Nourish your soul with Kardec Radio.
Join us every Thursday live, Evolution in Two Worlds, a journey of the soul through the teachings of the Spirit Doctor, Andrea Luiz. Connect at www.tvcei.com, Channel 2.
Nourish Your Soul with Kardec Radio.
Come and join the Spirit Cell of Baltimore as we promote a special event on March 25th at 12 p.m. at the Riscom Mansion. A special Italian lunch will be served, followed by a special guest speaker, Dr. Brian Sundaroff, who will speak about illness as a demanding teacher. Come out on this enriching Sunday to feed both your mind and body. For more information, go to www.ssbaltimore.org today.
Nourish Your Soul with Kardec Radio.
This is Dr. Nara Venditti with Succeed in America by Packaging Your Brilliance. And thank you for listening. Our topic today is Boost Your Career with Toastmasters. Many non-native speakers know that understanding and speaking are two different skills. We hear English speech at work and in our personal life just about all the time. How do you improve your speaking skills? Your answer could be Toastmasters. What is Toastmasters? It's an international organization with clubs all over the world dedicated to improving and building communication and leadership skills. These are the two top skills in American workplace and I would say in any workplace. This club offers a supportive environment where members learn and practice their speaking skills in a friendly setting. Meetings usually start with a short business session that teaches basic business procedures. Members conduct exercises in making unprepared speeches. Some members deliver a prepared speech based on a manual. Speakers are assigned evaluators who provide constructive criticism on how the speaker can improve, and that's extremely important. Toastmasters can help you in many ways. A good reason to join Toastmasters is to build your resume. The skills you will acquire and develop are transferable to the professional life. For instance, planning responsibilities of a club vice president of education, for example, include chairing education committee, planning meetings, educating members about Toastmasters International Program, and arranging and coordinating speech contests. Some of the skills developed in this role are motivation, planning, interpersonal skills, goal setting, and improved written communication. Where can you find those clubs? You can find a Toastmasters club in virtually every country of the world. Just go to www.toastmasters.org to find a club near you. Now, if you speak English with an accent, when you speak at the meetings, ask the club members to jot down those words in your speech they did not understand. Practice saying those words at home and incorporate them into your speech at the next meeting. This is Dr. Nara Venditti with Succeed in America by Packaging Your Brilliance. If you like the transcript of this mini show, go to my blog, succeedinamerica7.blogspot.com. And thank you for listening.
And now we return to our program.
Dear listener, we are here with Dr. Renae Reinardy, and she is here honoring us with her presence and her expertise on obsessive-compulsive disorder, specifically hoarding. Thank you so much, Dr. Reinardy, for being with us at Kardec Radio today.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I'm happy to be here chatting with you and interacting with your listeners at home, too, and hope to give a lot of information on the topic today.
All right. Thank you so much. And we know you have a DVD entitled Information about Compulsive Disorder, Hoarding, available at Amazon.com. And there you talk about hoarding very educationally for everyone. But what is hoarding? Just so people are on the same page with us. Is it a psychiatric disorder? What is it?
Mm-hmm. And that's really a big question, because hoarding, the best way to think about hoarding is it's a symptom that can result from a number of different things. So it's similar to having a cough. There's a number of reasons for it. You may have a cold, you could have allergies, you could have just eaten a hot chili pepper. And for compulsive hoarding, it's very similar to that. There's common factors, of course, with that. One, oftentimes, is compulsive acquisition. And that's one piece that oftentimes gets overlooked with compulsive hoarding, because we get so distracted by the clutter, by the state of the living environment, that we sometimes forget, well, how did it get there like that in the first place? So we want to always look first at compulsive acquisition. Is it gradual accumulation over many, many years, sometimes decades, or is it a problem with compulsive shopping or compulsive acquisition that may be anything from dumpster diving to compulsively acquiring things at discount stores? So that's one piece we want to look at. We also want to look at, the more obvious, the clutter, and the difficulties that people are having in being able to process that, the amount of possessions that they have. And there are a number of different reasons for that difficulty, which we can talk a lot about here today. So we want to look at that, because it's not a one-size-fits-all. So there's a number of reasons why people hoard and why they have difficulties making decisions.
So according to what you're saying, would you say there are levels of hoarding then?
Absolutely. So like most things, it can occur on a continuum from very mild, and this kind of gets into prevalence rates too. When I first started treating hoarding about 12 years ago, the estimates were about 600,000 Americans were thought to struggle with hoarding. Now, conservative estimates are about 3 million, and I've seen some studies that show that that may be as high as 10 million. And a lot of that difference in the prevalence rate has to do with, well, where do we draw the line? What is collecting? What is hoarding? What's a little bit of clutter, and what is more obvious squalor conditions, things like that. Now, if we talked about people who couldn't park in their garage because it's full of stuff, well, that number would go up astronomically, I think. But it's something that, it's a huge problem in our society, and not only in the United States, but all over the world.
So are there studies already showing, like, is hoarding a thing of the modern society or modern times, or has it always been present in some way and form?
I think hoarding has been present always in some variety or some type of form. I think the difference is that hoarding in some situations is adaptive. If I was in the middle of Siberia and without a lot of resources, and when I go to the store, I have to know exactly what I need. I need to stock up. But when we live in societies where there's too much, but still when people hold on to that thought process or that concept, that can contribute to the hoarding problem too. So I think hoarding has always been there, and I think it's something that our certain societies make it easier to hoard, especially when there's so much waste in places like the United States especially.
But does, for example, the National Institute of Mental Health already consider hoarding as a psychiatric disorder?
Yes. And we do, the research on compulsive hoarding is really still in its infancy. Two researchers, Randy Frost and Gail Steckity, are kind of the pioneers in compulsive hoarding and been doing research for about 20 years. But it hasn't really gotten a lot of attention until there's been more media focus on compulsive hoarding. Now we're getting more and more grants to be able to do the research, to be able to better help people. A few things that we do know about hoarding is we do know that it does have a genetic component. There is evidence of that. There's also research being done on the structure and some chemical things that are specific to compulsive hoarding as well. So it does seem to be a biological or definitely psychiatric disorder, and it's so much more than just personality or any of those things that sometimes people just attribute hoarding to being messy or not having these certain characteristics that lead to a clean home, but it's much more than that.
And would you say that we don't want to be judgmental here, but more on the therapeutic part of it, would you say that this form of attachment that becomes so pathological is probably a social symptom of our individualistic, selfish society, or how is that seen in psychology?
I think that, when it comes to the individuals who are struggling with compulsive hoarding, there's a number of reasons, like I said, as to why they hoard. Sometimes it's protective. I work with a lot of individuals that are victims of abuse, and they hoard in order to put that attachment into items that they view to be safer objects. So by hoarding all of this stuff, it feels safe to have attachments to animals or to have attachments to clothing or, dolls or cute little figurines, that feels like a safe relationship to them because previous relationships haven't worked out so well with humans. So that can be one component of it. A lot of people who hoard, however, fantastic people. You would absolutely have no idea what their home looks like. And I use an analogy of the SICK model. And SICK stands for sensitive, intelligent, creative, and kind. Because people are oftentimes very sensitive. They want to do the right things. They care about the environment. They want to recycle. The problem is they get so backlogged that they have 5 peanut butter jars sitting on the countertop all soaking because they want to recycle it in a perfect way. We see this intelligence, especially with information hoarders, that they are really intelligent individuals who can read the Washington Post and can look at New Scientist magazine and comprehend everything that's in there. Again, they want to learn so much they can't keep up with themselves. The creativity or curiosity that comes with that C of the SICK model. A lot of my clients that hoard are very creative individuals, and when they see a water bottle, a lot of times people will just throw it into the recycling bin or something afterwards. But a lot of people who hoard will look at that and think, oh, I can fill it full of colorful sand and make a candle holder out of it. Or, there's all this potential in items that they see. The last piece is that kindness and wanting to help other people and help their neighbors. But I do agree with you that it is this misguided attempt for these feelings of fullness or completeness that then gets, I guess, directed towards stuff rather than directed toward personal growth or relationships with others. So I think the intentions are good, but the attachment, I think, is problematic in a lot of people who hoard.
Exactly. And as you're talking about the different types of hoarders, we also see many people nowadays who have like one computer and then that crashes, they buy another one, they keep the old and the new, and then when you see, they have all of them. One is functioning well, the other one. So it's like, what do you call, like, it's not information, what is that, technology?
It's kind of like a digital or technology hoarding, and that's kind of a new, I guess when it comes to society, that's maybe a new subtype of hoarding, but the same basic principles behind it is this fear of not having something when we want it, or this fear of incompleteness. I think that a lot of times people want this full feeling inside of them, and they try to find that through a variety of different ways. Sometimes it's through substances, sometimes it's through compulsive behaviors, and for some people it's compulsive hoarding. And that may be possessions, that may be information, and that may be this sense of security that they have by having all of this information. Information hoarding or digital hoarding is becoming a huge problem for people spending many, many hours on their computers, not engaging with their family or doing things that are truly fulfilling, but trying to download music and movies and keeping all of their emails and, like you said, saving old computer systems because of that just-in-case feeling and that aversion to risk and fear of making a mistake or not having something if they needed it, and catastrophic thoughts, of course, about not having that item.
And at the beginning, you talked about one of the features of hoarding being compulsive acquisition. And here we go back, as we talk about technology, you see that even the system in our society pushes us to be like compulsive to acquiring the latest iPad, the latest this. We're not against progress, on the contrary, we're pro-progress, but how much of it is really creating this compulsive acquisition on technology, right?
I agree. And I think that it is a huge problem because people are spending money that they don't have. They're spending time that they really, could be using it with other things that would be more fulfilling for them. But I think that a lot of societies push this idea of, if I have this newest technology product, or if I have this new necklace or these new pairs of shoes or a certain handbag, that I can live in this fantasy and escape my own suffering. And, of course, that never works. but it's something that everybody or a lot of people engage in anyway. Even though in theory we know that it isn't going to make us happy, people still have that primal drive, and I think a lot of people can be so easily misguided to think that that's going to come in the form of a new car or a new gadget or a new piece of jewelry, that they chase after it. And what happens is that when people get that item, everybody, a lot of people like a new car, and driving around in it feels good, but of course that happiness isn't lasting. So it's a very impermanent source, and that's something that I think people need to remember. The problem is when that newness and excitement fades, then people want to chase that feeling again, so they go out and they get something else that's new, and they get caught in this compulsive pattern of acquisition, whether it's technology or anything else, because they're thinking, oh, this is going to make me happy, this is going to make me happy. And I think that's where people get so depressed and feelings of despair, especially when they do have the resources and money to buy all of these things or do all of these things that they want to do, and they realize at the end of the day, I'm still not happy. I think that then people really get concerned because they don't know how to make themselves happy, so they just keep doing what's familiar to them, even though it doesn't work.
And as you're talking the subject, we'll have to go to a very short break, but when we come back, we would like to continue there. As you say in your DVD, there are what we call erroneous beliefs, and we want to be back with you so you can explain us more about that, okay?
Sure.
We will return to our program after these messages.
Kardec Radio, live, every Saturday at 11 a.m.
Nourish your soul with Kardec Radio.
Now available for purchase, the book Chico Xavier, Medium of the Century by Guy Léon Playfair. This is the first biographical and critical study in English of one of the outstanding mediums of all time, through whom more than 450 books were received by automatic writing over a 70-year period, few of which until recently were available in English translations. Purchase your copy today at www.roundtablepublishing-uk.com www.roundtablepublishing-uk.com.
The newest edition of the Medium's book by Allan Kardec is now available. Purchase your copy online or via your ebook reader. Simply go to www.ediciofamerica.com today.
Nourish your soul with Kardec Radio.
Join us every Thursday live. Evolution in Two Worlds. A journey of the soul through the teachings of the Spirit Doctor, Andrea Luiz. Connect at www.tvcei.com, Channel 2.
Nourish your soul with Kardec Radio.
Spiritism for Everyone, the online study of the Spirit's Book and the Gospel according to Spiritism. Spiritism for Everyone meets every Wednesday evening and Saturday morning using the latest technology in web conferencing. You can join in from any computer in the comfort of your home or office, no matter where you are in the U.S. or the world. Spiritism for Everyone is open, free, and requires no registration. To access the web live meetings, go to www.spiritus.us. Spiritism for Everyone is a program of the United States Spiritist Council.
And now we return to our program.
Well, we are now talking about erroneous beliefs, a topic that was well guided and discussed in Dr. Reinardy's DVD that you can access at Amazon.com. You can buy it there. Information about compulsive hoarding. So, Dr. Reinardy, you're talking about the several different reasons why people pathologically hang on to things. Maybe fear, past experiences like abuse, you said, or some form of family pattern. So, what else could be there as an underlying mechanism for hoarding?
Well, I think one thing that we always want to explore is this notion of erroneous beliefs, or these concepts that people hold about their possessions and the role of those possessions, or even the way in which they believe things need to be organized. One of the most common erroneous beliefs that I find in compulsive hoarding is this concept of perfectionism. And that is shocking to a lot of people, because when you look at a cluttered home, perfectionism isn't the first thing that comes to mind oftentimes, because a lot of times it's a very chaotic appearance to the home. And so, but we want to look at why that is. A lot of compulsive hoarders are not able to organize and classify their possessions because they believe that it has to be done in this just right way, and they have to have this feeling of just rightness before they can even get started. So, well, I can't really organize today, I have a headache, or I don't have enough time to do it, or I can't put my books on the bookshelf because I want to create a Dewey Decimal System, or I want to replace the bookshelves that I have with this pretty, cherry wood, or just something like that. So, and this is something that's really misunderstood in compulsive hoarding, and where family members will get really frustrated too, because they'll go in to try to help somebody who has a compulsive hoarding problem, and maybe they'll see all the clothes laying on the floor, and they'll hang the clothes in the closet, and the compulsive hoarder will say, oh gosh, I can't believe that you did that, and that's such a violation, and I don't like the way that you did that. And the family member feels so unappreciated, because here they took the clothes from the floor and hung them in the closet. But a lot of times, because of that perfectionism, the person struggling with hoarding is so frustrated because it's not done in this perfect way, this way that they had envisioned it, of this, this beautiful home that they're waiting to create. But they're never quite able to get there because of all these steps that they want to take toward this perfectionism. It's just too overwhelming.
So you're talking about the difficulty in the way they perceive themselves and the world, or their loved ones as well, right?
Absolutely, and the expectations that they put on that are too high. So a lot of times we'll take that erroneous belief of perfectionism and try to go with it just good enough. And what people find oftentimes is, perfectionism is a volume knob. It isn't an all or nothing thing. But we want to turn it down a little bit just so that we can function and move on with our life, do what we need to do, but also have better balance. So perfectionism is definitely one of the big beliefs that we look at. And there's a number of others, too. I want to look at beliefs about memory that people have. Some people that I work with that struggle with hoarding believe that they need to remember everything in the newspaper cover to cover, and if they don't, well, I better hold on to it and I better save it. So I want to look at their expectations that they have about their memory. And so that's another piece, and kind of closely tied to perfectionism there, and the expectations that they put on themselves. Another is the opportunities that possessions provide, believing that this new turquoise necklace is going to make all kinds of friends for me because everybody's going to stop me and say how beautiful it is. So we want to look at thoughts like that. Or another thing that happens and causes a lot of conflict in families is that people struggling with hoarding, because they put so much value into possessions, they'll oftentimes be gift givers too. And especially if it's a parent struggling with compulsive hoarding, and if they have adult children, a lot of times they'll give gifts to their adult children. And the adult children don't want gifts. They just want their parents to clean up their house. So the hoarder, buys this item with all these fantasies of, I'm going to give my daughter this beautiful name brand jacket, and it's going to fix everything, and she's going to be so grateful to me, and see what a good shopper I am, and what a good deal I got in. But it doesn't work that way. So we want to look at some of those belief systems and what's contributing to this compulsive acquisition and saving. Also, hyper-responsibility is another very common erroneous belief. This can take place especially with animal hoarding. Nobody's able to take care of these animals the way that I would take care of them. If if they go to the shelter, they're going to be euthanized. So it's something, we want to look at those types of beliefs. Of course, attachment, too, and people saving items as representations of themselves or representations of people that they care about, saving all of their children's artwork from when they were little. Maybe they're 35 years old now, but believing that if I got rid of that snowman that my daughter drew when she was 5, that means that I don't love her anymore, or she's going to think that I don't love her anymore if I got rid of this one piece of artwork. So those are some of the just a few actually of the thoughts that can take place. But there, we want to assess that because every individual is going to have their own internal soap opera and their own internal script as to why we engage in whatever behavior we're engaging in that isn't very adaptive.
That is pathological. But one of the most puzzling parts of hoarding is the fact that usually these people, they have loved ones living with them, and they feel so powerless. And sometimes watching these programs or having met a few people ourselves, when they are living alone, it's one scenario. But when we're living with their children or their, loved ones in general, is there some form of codependency from their loved ones that, gives room to the continuation of this pathology?
Yeah, that's a good question. And, of course, every situation is, somewhat unique. But, again, we see some commonalities. And, yes, codependency, similar to what you find in substance addiction, can be there. There's lots of times where I'll be called in, and we'll say it's a husband and wife, and the wife will call me and say, my husband's a horrible hoarder, and we need help, and there's all of this finger pointing. And I'll come into the home, and oftentimes both of them struggle with compulsive hoarding. But one person is catching a little bit more blame. And sometimes we think, a match made in heaven. Two hoarders come together, but it doesn't work that way. Of course, there's arguments about space, and very rarely do people hoard the same types of things, and that's problematic. Of course, when there's vulnerable adults or children or animals involved, that's when sometimes we do need to get social services involved and need to take more drastic actions. And we can't always depend on the person with the compulsive hoarding to wait for them to be motivated to change. Sometimes we do have to do emergency cleanups, especially in those situations. But it's very difficult, and it causes a tremendous amount of stress on family members. And it's hard for people to understand that, why don't you just clean it up when she's gone, or, whatever. But it doesn't work that way. And a lot of family members have tried that. Adult children of compulsive hoarders may, send their parent who struggles with hoarding on vacation and clean out the home while they're gone. Well, when the person returns, because of that deep attachment that they have to their possessions, it's extremely traumatizing to the hoarder. The adult child who cleaned up the home for the parent that hoards oftentimes feels very unappreciated and had no idea the backlash that they would experience from their parent that hoards. And so it's all of these good intentions, but it just leads to really, really difficult situations, and oftentimes does pull families apart and leads to divorce and removal of children from the homes, removal of pets from the homes, because of this maladaptive coping that's taking place where possessions are taking over. So it is a huge problem, and there's a number of reasons for it. So codependency is one. Sometimes it's learned helplessness. We cleaned out the house, it got cluttered again in 6 months, so it did absolutely no good. I'm not going to do that again. Or for the spouse of a compulsive hoarder, they get so much anger directed at them whenever they try to throw something away that they kind of give up. So it's the system. It doesn't happen overnight. So it gradually kind of molds into this pathological way of living.
What about children whom at very early stages in their lives, you can already observe that there is some form of a hoarding trait there?
Absolutely.
Right? Have you seen cases like this?
I have, and this is when we want to intervene. Like I said, hoarding does tend to be biological in nature with genetic components, structural variables. So the sooner that we intervene with compulsive hoarding, the better, because we can train the brain and teach people some more adaptive ways to cope with stress, to have more appropriate forms of attachment, and also decision making, which is really the hallmark feature of compulsive hoarding. People can't decide, so they pick something up, and instead of putting it into a certain category, I'm going to throw this away or I'm going to keep this, everything gets churned. It gets put back, and I don't know what to do with this. Let me just put it back over here. So it gets to be this shifting game, just moving things from one place to the next. And this is something that you can work with people of any age. I have children that I work with that have compulsive hoarding tendencies, and I'll work with them on decision making. I'll have them bring in a box of their toys or clothes or something, they'll bring it into session and we'll practice that decision-making ability for them. So, and that makes a huge difference, so that they don't have decades of living like this, because it's extremely stressful.
Yes, and sometimes it can be also, as you said, not only is going to impact on the family ties, but it can be very hazardous to the person herself, the family, right, and the community.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. There's a lot of consequences of compulsive hoarding, and social interactions are just one. A lot of people have financial difficulties because of compulsive acquisition, legal problems because they haven't paid taxes in years and years, because that requires a lot of coordination of paperwork and things like that. People will get fired from their jobs because they're not able to get things done, or their offices get overly cluttered. People have been in car accidents because their cars are cluttered, fires, of course, other safety and health threats are there, allergies and mold, and there's a pretty big list of consequences to this behavior.
Yeah, and if we go back to the preventing aspect of it, as you said before, there are levels of hoarding. Now,
absolutely.
Is it possible to? How can we train people to perceive that they are beginning to climb the mountain of hoarding?
Well, and this is really where media and radio shows like this are so incredibly important, because when people start to hear this and it becomes more part of our culture as something to watch out for, people are going to know, oh, that's what this is. So, and I think it was something that was so hidden before, and a lot of people that struggled from compulsive hoarding kept it as this big, dark secret, and nobody knew that they lived that way, even family members sometimes, because there's always excuses as to, why I never have a certain holiday at my house, things like that, that it often went unidentified. Now, with increased awareness of compulsive hoarding, people know, first of all, that they're not alone. They also know that there's help available. So that makes a big difference in being able to intervene early, being able to understand some of these characteristics of hoarding, and that's where the education piece comes in, and doing interviews like this so that the general public gets to hear about, okay, you know what, I do have difficulties with decision making, or my garage is full, or I do have a couple extra storage units, or I do have too much in my car, or I have a hard time deleting emails. I have 50,000 emails on my computer. They can recognize some of these characteristics in themselves, and there's no better time to get help than right now, because hoarding is something that doesn't tend to improve on its own. It just tends to snowball and get worse and worse.
And
so the sooner
Reinardy,
that people intervene, the better. Yes.
So as you're saying this, let's say somebody is there with a little bit of hoarding, so they keep the garage full, but it's still, it's doable. They can still park one of the cars there, not two, but at least one, and they go to they have their bedroom pretty organized. Just there is like an office that was supposed to be an office, but then became like a storage. And then one day they had a major difficult event in their lives. And then hoarding escalates. Is that how possibly things can happen as well?
It certainly can, and that's a pretty common scenario for people, is that there's this, I'm too busy, I can't deal with this stuff that I have, and not really processing that the input, is disproportionate to the output of what's going on in the home. And so, those things can happen very, very quickly. And you're right, when people have this event that takes place in their life, so maybe their spouse dies, or even a life transition, so the children leave the home, or retirement, or things like that. Even happy events sometimes can shift people into this state of indecisiveness and not being able to have that structure to do what they need to do. In the back backlog grows, and then the overwhelm, it really sets in. And that's when I think it's important for people to start to recognize that and get help. And maybe that help is from a psychologist. Sometimes it could be a professional organizer or a friend. And that's where sometimes we need to swallow our own pride and be able to say, hey, you know what, I need help here. So, and that's a really important thing to do, and something that I think so many of our societies are losing. People are not making time for one another and not willing to ask for help or even give the help sometimes. So I think that it is important for people to try to catch that behavior early, or if you know somebody that's struggling with compulsive hoarding, you know, telling them that you do care about them and that you are willing to help them. And help doesn't always mean I'll come in and throw away all of your things. Nobody struggling with compulsive hoarding is going to sign up for that. And that's so it's about, you know, I'll help you make some decisions about things. I'll help you carry things. I'll sit with you while you make decisions about things, because hoarding is in this whole pathological system, the only way to get out of it is to build this new set of skills. So if we come in and we clean for somebody struggling with compulsive hoarding, that's all we're doing is we're cleaning, and we haven't taught them anything. So 10 times out of 10, the house is going to get recluttered again. So we have to sit with them, teach them the skills, make the decisions yourself. And in the beginning, just like, you know, anything, I used to be a gymnast. The first time I was on a balance beam, I wasn't able to do a back handspring on it. So it was something I had to start gradually and walk and you know across it at first on the low beam, and that's how we need to approach compulsive hoarding too, is to understand it as a skills deficit. It's not about being, you know, lazy or messy. It's about not having the skills to make the decisions about their possessions. So we want to sit with them and you know, again, just like we would teach somebody gymnastics or algebra or anything like that, it requires patience and it requires starting from ground zero, knowing that people are going to make mistakes. They're going to save things that you don't think that they should, but as long as they're making some decisions and being able to part with some items, that's good, because as they practice, they're going to get better at it.
That's interesting. And as you're talking, we were picturing cases that we've got to know, we watch on TV as well, people who would, as you said, like keep a bottle of water, empty bottle of water, because they felt like they threw that away. If the mother gave it to him or her, that would be like symbolic to not being grateful to that person or hurting the person who gave them that. And then we keep this compulsiveness, right?
Right. Absolutely. And there's lots of things around that. When I'm working with somebody who has a lot of emotional attachment to their possessions, there's steps that we could take in between, especially in those emergency cleanup situations. When I'm working with somebody who's going to be evicted in 30 days, or Child Protective Services is working with the family and the children are going to be removed if they don't clean the house, you know, in the next week or something. We don't have time to go through the therapeutic process of, you know, letting go of that attachment and working on these new systems. So there's little tricks that we can do. Sometimes we'll take pictures of items, or we'll do a memory book, and we'll write things down in that, just so, you know, I don't want to forget about this experience. I don't want to forget about this piece of art, or I don't want to forget about this water bottle that I drank when I, you know, went to this family event, or, you know, whatever attachment that they have. Instead of saving that actual possession, if they're not ready to say goodbye to that item, we'll do it somewhere in between of using, you know, digital photography or writing in a memory book as a step in between. You know, that isn't the ultimate, you know, best solution, but because ultimately we want people to be able to part with those items completely and know that that's okay. But sometimes that helps to just kind of ease people into these emergency cleanup situations.
And if we can now, I like your DVD because it talks about very practical ways of dealing with it from the loved one's perspective, right?
Yeah.
How should one begin to realize, my loved one is a hoarder? We know we don't want to label, because labeling really does not improve situation, does not resolve it. But realizing that it's manifested as such is probably one step, right? Because the denial is one of the impediments to the healing. Is that right?
Right, absolutely. And anger would be another one, too, with family members, that no amount of threat or, consequence is going to change the behavior. So the way to think about compulsive hoarding is similar to dyslexia or diabetes or something like that. We're not going to say to somebody with dyslexia, what are you, stupid? Why can't you read? That would be shocking. We would never do that. But that's oftentimes how people treat compulsive hoarders. You're messy. Why are you doing this? You must not love your children if you have them live in this type of home. So there's a lot of threat that gets put on compulsive hoarders. No amount of threat in the world is going to be able to change their hoarding problem. Same thing with dyslexia. If I'm standing over somebody who has difficulty reading and calling them stupid, it's probably just going to make it worse. And the same thing happens for compulsive hoarding. If I'm calling them, a slob and, doing this, using this anger projection, that isn't motivating. So the best thing to do for somebody struggling with compulsive hoarding is to first educate yourself. Educate yourself as to their particular subtype of hoarding. Is it coming from depression? Is it coming from obsessive compulsive disorder? Did it come from trauma? What's the function behind the compulsive hoarding? Because every behavior that we engage in has some type of function to it, some kind of reward or some kind of, relief or happiness that they're trying to seek from it.
So according
to
your
conception, go ahead.
No, so what you're saying is that also the loved ones need to help themselves to help the hoarder, right?
Absolutely. So in order to help your loved one that hoards, you need to know what they're dealing with. So because oftentimes the compulsive hoarder is so lost in their behavior, and even for people, who are struggling with hoarding, education has to be the first step. So just to be able to really understand what you're dealing with, it's like putting together a piece of furniture. We can't just do it sometimes. We need to read the instructions in order not to have, a really bad outcome. And approaching compulsive hoarding is similar to that. We need to first know what we're dealing with. Because if I'm working with somebody who's hoarding because of trauma reasons, their treatment and the approach that we take is going to be very, very different than somebody who hoards because they have more difficulties with attention and distractibility and things like that. So I want to know about their particular flavor of hoarding. We have to, of course, consider, the safety of everyone in the house and, what type of approach we can take to and how quickly we need to move. But education is always important. Not getting discouraged and trying to be supportive for that individual is also good. Understanding that it is difficult for them. If it was an easy behavior for them to change, they would have done it years ago. So that's another thing. We want to reward progress that people are making. So if they spend 5 minutes, making decisions about their possessions, we want to reinforce that. Say, oh, good job. I see that you're working at that. Because, again, we're trying to motivate somebody. We don't want to come in and say, oh, well, that's a drop in the bucket. It's going to take 20 years at this rate. But that may be how you feel as a family member or even people struggling with hoarding themselves. It can be, oh, my goodness, this is going to take forever. But, again, understanding that it's a skill. It's slow in the beginning, just like training for a marathon or something. But as you practice, we get closer and closer approximations to where we want to be. So that's an important thing to remember, too. Giving people structure is also important. Knowing that we can just do one target area at a time. We can't clean the whole house, but right now there's, let's focus on the coffee table and getting that decluttered. So, because, first it's the coffee table, then it's the couch, then it's the floor around, and then it's the side table, then it's, and it gradually, we gain back more and more space, but we have to start somewhere. And it's not an impossible task, and that's important things for people to keep in mind.
Yeah, so it's possible. So, Dr. Reinardy, we're going to give one last short break, and when we come back, we want to ask you more about some of the aspects of treating hoarding.
Okay, sounds good.
We will return to our program after these messages.
For the first time ever, the book Between Heaven and Earth by the spirit André Luiz, psychographed by Chico Xavier, is now in English. This is a novel that offers information about the relationship that exists in the activities of the spirit on the two planes of life. Purchase your copy today at www.ediseiofamerica.com.
Nourish Your Soul with Kardec Radio.
Now in English, the book Action and Reaction by the Spirit Andrea Louise, psychographed by Chico Xavier. Buy your copy online or via your ebook reader. Go to www.ediceiofamerica.com today. The International Spiritist Council is organizing and promoting the 7th World Spiritist Congress, which will be held in Havana, Cuba on March 23rd through the 25th of 2013. The Congress theme will be Charity and Spiritual Education in Building a World of Peace. 150 years of the Gospel according to Spiritism. For more information, please visit www.7cem.org.
And now we return to our program.
Dear listener, we are here in the final moments with Dr. Reinardy, really learning a whole lot about hoarding, and not only it, but the beautiful perspective that she brings to us on the possibilities of healing and the beautiful compassionate approach that she is promoting and teaching us here. So Dr. Reinardy, when you talk about hoarding, the hope that it's possible to heal it, and as you're saying, comparing to other physical illnesses, when we detect that there is some form of pathological hoarding, we should get all the possible resources to deal with it as much as if we were dealing with cancer or some other form of illnesses. Is that right?
Exactly. We want to take a proactive approach and a very caring and compassionate approach because, as I mentioned, using threats or things like that they're just not helpful. So, and it's stressful for the family members too. But when we come from this area of compassion, we come from this area of truly caring about the person that we care about, who compulsively hoards. That's what we want to keep in mind, and we do want to remember all of those other aspects that we love about that individual. And not just focus in on that one sliver of who they are, struggling with compulsive hoarding. And I see that happen so often, where we lose the entirety of the person because we just focus on that one symptom. And so oftentimes in this healing process, I'll work with family members to, if their mother struggles from compulsive hoarding, I'll say, you know what, take your mom out for lunch. Don't talk about the house at all. Just enjoy her for who she is and build on that relationship, because as family members become more and more disengaged, that's where the hoarding becomes even worse, because people will turn more toward their possessions then. So if we can strengthen some of those human relationships, that then will make it easier for people to let go of their attachments to their possessions. So we always want to look at replacement behaviors. When I work with people that don't have family or friends, we'll start to build some of that in. I'll give you an example. A woman that I worked with, she didn't have any family really, and it had never been married, and she was really enjoying her books. She had thousands and thousands of books, and that's how she lived her life. But they were all romance and excitement and adventure books, and so what we did was, in order for her to let go of that life that she was living through her books, is we started to create some of that excitement and romance in her real life, so that she joined an outdoor club, so where she was doing hiking and kayaking and things like that, and that gave her some of that interaction that she wanted, and it made it so much easier for her to let go of those, romance novels and all of these books that she had. So, so that was, it was fulfilling herself in a different way, in a way that was more lasting and more, connected to other people.
That's interesting. But
so that's important, and for family to do that, to really reach out to the person that hoards. And it can be hard to do initially, because there's oftentimes going to be resistance and resentment sometimes of bringing the problem out to the open. But it's something that needs to happen. Otherwise, everyone just continues to live in denial.
Exactly. And Dr. Reinardy, we received this question before we opened for the show by email. And the person who is a spiritist asked this question, is it possible that teaching the hoarder that there are so many people who lack the necessary in the world. Would that be also an educational approach to the hoarders? So they would think of, for example, there are people in Africa who do not even have like a bottle of water. Would that be a way to change their erroneous beliefs?
Well, sometimes that's a belief that's contributing to it. A lot of hoarders do have good intentions for their belongings. They're saving things to donate to the local elementary school or the local homeless shelter or things like that. But the problem is they get so backlogged that it never gets there. Very rarely do I work with hoarders that are greedy or miserly. A lot of times people, they want to do what's right. They want to be able to help other people, but they never are quite able to do it. All these perfect circumstances have to take place. And when that's the case of somebody who wants to help, but their system isn't working, that's when we'll kind of say, okay, let's try a different system. Let's volunteer your time rather than trying to collect, egg cartons for the local elementary school or, things like that. Let's redirect that compassion because blind compassion is not very helpful and can be harmful. So we want to do it in a way that actually produces results, for the world and for them too. So a lot of people that hoard don't do it to be greedy. Actually, a lot of times they're trying to help, but it just isn't working. So
to help them in that regard, would you suggest that, okay, don't wait for the perfect day, just do it right away? It even rhymes.
Yeah, just good enough. It has to be the mantra. So just good enough. Or being able to let go of something when it's not working. Being able to say, okay, this isn't my strength. Let me find what my strength is. So maybe I shouldn't be the person collecting things, donations of jackets to donate to the local homeless shelter because I've collected the jackets, but I've never gotten them to where they need to be. So, we just want to take a step back, be brutally honest with ourselves, identify our strengths and weaknesses, and then know how we can be helpful to others. So I think that's a really important thing to do.
All right, that's great. Dr. Reinardy, we have here Josiah Korngold from New York who wrote at our chat that she found very interesting your approach and very enlightening as well. And as we are enjoying much and recommending our listeners that they get your DVD information about compulsive hoarding at Amazon.com, what would you say as your final comments to our listeners today?
Well, I just appreciate everybody listening, and compulsive hoarding is a very prevalent problem. I think intervene as soon as possible and do it in a loving way, whether that's toward yourself or toward somebody that you care about who struggles with hoarding. And there are resources available, and hoarding definitely is a form of suffering, but there is an end to that, and it's something that certainly can get better.
All right. Dr. Reinardy, we're truly honored to having had you here at Kardec Radio, and we truly hope we can have you back in the near future. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
So, dear listener, we are here truly resourceful. We're resourceful because now we got new elements to the plate to deal with this condition with compassion. Dr. Reinardy really opened a new perspective for all of us in the way we see hoarding with a lot of compassion. You see, true psychologists are like this. They're compassionate. They really care, and they don't push us to the impossible, but they walk us through the steps of the changes we need. Right now, we want to unfold the spiritist concept on hoarding as well, which is much aligned with what Dr. Reinardy brought to us psychologically, and has also other elements that we think are there as well. For example, sometimes we may say that we want, I want to keep this to give it to somebody else, but deep inside, as the spirits mentioned, sometimes we're still in need. It's like that nasty need. And we also have spiritual entities as well. We cannot forget that we're always surrounded by a cloud of testimony, as said St. Paul in the New Testament, meaning other minds of the beyond who are earthbound and are as ill as the hoarder, and they are there as well. Our Lechi, who was here at, and she's still here at the chat room of Kardec Radio, she asked us this question at the very beginning of the show. The reason we want to know whether spiritual obsession is taking place in hoarding. For sure, any critical condition that shows some form of dependency, some form of pathology, will open its door for others to plug in. We're never alone in this world, and who is going to be with us when we are in that condition? So a spiritual intervention is also important. As Dr. Reinardy said, we need to find help. Where? With family members. We need to find psychologists as good as Dr. Reinardy. Hopefully they exist there as well. And also spiritual approach. So coming to spiritist centers, for example, is a good option because most likely the underlying reason why people are displaying that pathological compulsive acquisition, the compulsive hanging on to things, is related to some form of emotional crystallization, let's say this way. So we need to be very vigilant and get out of this with help, for sure. As Kardec says, we need to be open to educate ourselves. It's the acquisition of new habits. To acquire new habits, it takes time. That's why Dr. Reinardy was very insightful when she proposes a compassionate approach to hoarding. When you watch those programs, the first feeling is like, go there, throw everything away, Dr. Phil style, with all the care we have for Dr. Phil, but Dr. Phil style, sincerely, it's not going to work. Because Dr. Reinardy said, and research shows, if we go do it ourselves, it's not addressing the underlying reason why hoarding is existing in that family or in that person, in that relationship. We really need to address the root of the problem, and that takes time, persistence, caring, and we need to rescue that concept in our day-to-day society. Patience is a Christ virtue we need to rescue to our daily lives. We don't know it. That's why we have Kardec Radio, to remind us that this is important, because if we go turn the TV and watch some other programs sincerely, it just destroys the whole perspective, because some people promote the opposite of patience and kick our compulsive acquisition, the hoarding feelings. No wonder it's escalating in our society. We need to do something, and that's why Dr. Reinardy was here to share with us. Go to our website, lakesidecenter.org, and she has articles there. Also, go to Amazon.com and get her DVD, Information About Compulsive Hoarding. And now, dear listeners, we're going to leave you with beautiful segments that were put together by Kirsten DeMello, Dr. Margalhães, Naur and Gabi, and also the first one we're going to broadcast today is a new segment that is proposed for parents and educators. Bernadette Leal, who is Master's in Education, also a Spiritist, who has been leading this task force together with the United States Spiritist Council on Spiritist education for youth and children. She's now here with us at Kardec Radio, helping us to understand how we can teach our children to pray. Let us enjoy these beautiful segments today, as they are very informative, very uplifting, and at the end of the program, we'll be back with you for our final praying moment.
Welcome to our Youth Education in Spiritism with a Kardec Radio. I am Bernadette Leal, and we will be spending a few minutes with you, inspiring to bring a spiritual awareness and spiritist teachings to our youth, parents, and educators. As part of this segment, we'll be answering questions that we have been receiving from some parents and also educators of spiritist centers regarding youth spiritist education. Today, we will answer some questions about prayer. First question. My child shows no interest in praying. I have tried several approaches, but no success. How can I make my child to pray? Dear listeners, the first step is not trying to make your child to pray, because prayer comes from your heart. It is a connection with the Creator, and it has to be natural, spontaneous. Otherwise, it will just become words and no feelings. So, an easier question is, how can I invite my child to pray? Albert Bandura, in his social learning theory, explains that children learn from the environment. They learn from observation, imitation, and modeling. If you would like your child to pray, then you should start by giving the example. Ask yourself, how often does my child see me praying? Where? And in what situations? It is very common to dedicate a time and a place to pray outside the home, at a church, at a spiritist center, or in the bedroom with the closed doors. But prayer starts at home, and your child will benefit from seeing you doing it. So, instead of putting pressure on the child, insisting for him to pray, it should be the opposite. Begin by modeling that behavior in a friendly and joyful way, and slowly you will see the results. This is a more effective approach. Second question. Can you give me an example of how I can invite my child to pray? Well, let's say you had a bad day at work, or you are upset. Don't we all have those days once in a while? So, as you arrive at home, instead of being in a bad mood, kicking the cat, slamming the door, or isolating yourself in your bedroom, share how you feel with your child. Say, son, I'm not feeling well at this moment. Something happened at work. I'm a little bit upset. Depending on the age of your child, you may briefly give some details about what happened, but do not dwell on it. In fact, you are doing a wonderful thing by teaching him that it is okay to talk about your feelings instead of holding them inside. Then continue by saying, son, I'm going to pray, asking God for some guidance and to help me to calm my mind and heart down. Would you like to pray with me? You can just stay by my side and think good thoughts. Another suggestion is to choose one of the prayers from the last chapter of the Gospel According to Spiritism by Allan Kardec. You can ask your kid to read one of the prayers that best suits your situation after you say a sincere prayer from your heart. Well, most children and teenagers, they do not feel comfortable praying or saying words aloud at first. So by asking them to read the prayer, they will have a task, something to do, and they will feel they are helping you. It's not that we have to read or say a memorized prayer in order to be effective, because as the Spirit say in the preamble of the chapter 28 of the Gospel According to Spiritism, the form means nothing. The thought is everything. Say your prayer in a way that is in harmony with your convictions and in the way most inspiring to you, because a good thought is worth more than countless unfeeling and unfelt words. But reading a prayer may help your child to connect and feel more relaxed if he does not feel comfortable doing it. Another positive aspect of inviting your child to pray for you is that you are teaching him how to pray for others who are in need. You are teaching him compassion. Third question. What should I do if I invite my child to pray, but he doesn't want to? To prevent this, you shall begin this effort from early age. Actually, since the child is in your belly. If that passed, then it's all right if your child doesn't want to pray with you. It takes time because prayer is a learned behavior. What would you do then? Well, first, you acknowledge and accept his wish. Remember, you just don't want him to feel pressure that he has to pray with you. Then you excuse yourself, go somewhere quiet in the house, and pray for a few minutes. When you've finished, you come back, and you talk to your child saying, I'm feeling much better because I let God and my spiritual mentors to take care of the situation. Now, be careful to your actions and words afterwards, because if after you pray, you start losing your temper and being in a bad mood, you are also giving your kid the message that prayer does not work. Your actions show that prayer did not bring you peace to your heart and to your mind. If your prayer was truly sincere, you should feel better, and it should show to your child that you are feeling better, right? And that you trust God. We have seen in situations in which parents pray for peace at home. In fact, they say to their children about the importance of living in a world of harmony and being all peacemakers. But sometimes their behavior shows the contrary. For instance, let's say you want peace, but then you wake up late in the morning and realize that you are late for work. Your child can find his backpack, and you start to yell, getting stressed, and bringing negative energy to your home and to all the people around you. If you talk about peace with your children and pray about it, then you should start with you and mailing at home, because children will pick up that behavior from you and learn from observing how you handle stressful situations. You teach them peace or chaos, whatever you choose to show. Kardec Radio listeners, children need consistency, repetition, and see a regular, consistent prayer behavior. We know a real story of a teenage girl who refused to pray, but often observing her mother praying at home for different reasons. Her mom thought she never cared about prayer, but then one day she arrived at home very upset because a friend at her school had killed himself, and she asked her mother to pray with her for his soul and his family. It may take some time for your child to pray, but trust us, they will learn it from you, and sooner than you imagine, one day you may be praying together, or you will find your child praying for someone. Thanks for listening to Yes at Kardec Radio, and if you'd like to send us some questions, please email us at kardec@kardecradio.com.
We will return to our program after these messages.
Available for purchase, the book Conception of God by Herculano Pires. In this book, Professor Herculano Pires writes about the impossibility to conceive nothingness and the logic of God's existence. Learn more by purchasing your copy online at www.sgny.org.
Would you like to liberate yourself from your life struggles or to find inner balance? The Inner Journey CD has 3 beautiful visualizations that will help you bring harmony to your life. As Joanna DeAngeli tells us to, live in a way that you leave enlightening footprints in your pathway as if they were stars pointing out the pathway to happiness. To find this CD, go to the bookstore on the Spiritist Society of Baltimore webpage, www.ssbaltimore.org. That is www.ssbaltimore.org, and start your inner journey today.
Nourish your soul with Kardec Radio.
Now in English, the book Action and Reaction by the Spirit Andrea Louise, psychographed by Chico Xavier. Buy your copy online or via your ebook reader. Go to www.ediceiofamerica.com today.
Save the date for the 6th U.S. Spiritist Symposium that will be held at the Rialto Center for the Arts at Georgia State University in Atlanta, Georgia on Saturday, May 12, 2012. This year's topic is Love and Enlightenment, a Pathway to Self-Healing. Come out and enrich your mind, body, and soul. For more info, go to www.spiritistsymposium.org.
And now we return to our program.
Hello, dear Kardec Radio listeners, and welcome back to the Spiritist Moment. Today our discussions will be about therapeutic visualizations and meditations and how the benefits of it we can reap, and how it benefits our lives in general, and how does it benefit our lives. Well, first we ask, how often in our lives do we feel helpless? Do we feel sad, out of control when battling all sorts of issues? How does one find peace of mind and self-renewal in such a fast-paced world when there's issues going on all around us? Well, the answer may be simpler than we may imagine. Emmanuel, the spirit guide of the Brazilian Spiritist medium, Francisco Cândido Xavier, wrote in the book, The Pathway, the Truth, and the Light, the chapter entitled Meditating. He speaks of mankind's suffering and the need to feel alleviated and find solace. He states, quote, "Our mind needs peace as much as dry land needs water." Wow. And this is further illustrated in chapter 25 of the Gospel According to Spiritism that states that God has given them, meaning man, more than to the animal, the incessant desire to better themselves. It is this desire that drives them to seek out means of improving their situation. So what does this mean? We have an innate desire to be better, to be happier, to find a better way to do things in our lives. So how does one find peace and renewal? Meditation. It is a proposal. Emmanuel recommends that we meditate and seek a place inside of ourselves away from all disturbing thoughts and inferior ideas. And Joanna DeAngeli also backs this thought up in the book Existential Conflicts, when she talks about the mind's protective mechanism to psychologically escape in order to preserve our balance. And although some psychological escapes, she talks, are very untherapeutic, but to a certain extent, in certain situations, this escape is necessary for us to process and for us to find balance. So we understand that finding time to meditate is so important to our overall well-being, so much so that the most recent publication of the Spiritist magazine online, Divaldo Franco, gives a riveting interview about therapeutic visualization. He kindly shares with us that his mentor, Joanna DeAngeli, explained to him that, quote, "The mind is able to reconstitute the cellular organization. This happens because the mind focuses its vibrations onto the paraspirit, the organizing biological model. Then it can change its constitution, which will be reflected in the construction of cells, because the cells, not all, however, live on average 30 days. leading to mitosis. The mental field powerfully influences the biological phenomenon, helping its memory, which will produce one that is compatible with the psychic content that is cultivated in the mind. Wow. What does this mean to us, dear listeners? That we have the power ourselves to overcome, to change ourselves emotionally, physically, spiritually. What empowering thoughts these are for ourselves, dear listeners. Very powerful. Because if we can find time to meditate, utilizing therapeutic visualizations, which we can do anywhere. We feel comfortable. We can do them in our home. We can do them in our bedroom, our living room, our cars, even our offices at work. And also, if you desire to purchase this CD that has therapeutic visualizations, you can go to the Spiritist Society of Baltimore's bookstore online at www.ssbaltimore.org. Again, it's www.ssbaltimore.org. There you'll find great CDs by Joanne Giangelis and Givaldo Franco, the medium. We should take advantage of these great therapeutic tools to enlighten ourselves, alleviate our burden, because ultimately, as Kardec says, in the codification, in the Gospel according to Spiritism, as Joanne Giangelis says, as Emmanuel says, meditation is vital for our coping mechanisms, for us to alleviate, find solace, and happiness. So as always, dear friends, we always urge you to go and do your own study on the matter. But as always, we also wish you many blessings.
Hello, dear Kardec Radio listener. Welcome to the segment Spiritism in Your Life. Today we're going to talk about the consequences of child emotional abuse. Before we describe and talk about the medical consequences of early emotional abuse, we're going to read a passage from the Spirit's book, question 890. Is maternal love a virtue or an instinctive sentiment common to both humans and animals? It is both. Nature has endowed the mother with love towards her children in the interests of their preservation. But in the animal, this love is limited to their material needs and ceases when such care is no longer needed. In humans, it persists throughout life and consists in a devotion and self-denial that comprise true virtues. It even survives death itself, accompanying the child from beyond the grave. You can see that in it there's something more than in the animal. In question number 891, if maternal love is a natural law, why are there mothers who hate their children, frequently from birth? It is sometimes a trial chosen by the spirit of the child, or an expiation if it itself had been a bad father, a bad mother, or a bad child in another existence. In all such cases, a bad mother can only be animated by little evolved spirit, who seeks to create difficulties for the child so that he or she will fail in the chosen trial. Such a violation of natural law, however, will not remain unpunished, and the spirit of the child will be rewarded for the obstacles it has overcome. Dear listeners, as we can see, maternal love is the most sublime, beautiful form of love that we can experience incarnated on earth. But as we often see, there are many difficult relationships between child and parents that can start early on in their lives. And these difficulties very often will translate in severe psychological problems. A very good example of this is the child emotional abuse. It is one of the most common, but also elusive and difficult to identify forms of child abuse. It is defined as repeated damaging interaction between parents or caregivers and the child, leading to the idea that the child is flawed, unloved, or unwanted. There are many daily examples of child emotional abuse, and these can be categorized in 7 different categories. And as we will see today, many of the definitions described in these categories are seen very close to us and very often, unfortunately. The first type of emotional abuse is rejection. Rejecting is refusing to acknowledge a child's worth and the legitimacy of his or her needs, refusing to show affection. The second category is isolation. Isolating is denying the child normal social experiences, familial, peer relationships, creating the sense that the child is alone in the world. And some parents may even lock in the child in their houses, bedroom, and many other places. Third form of child emotional abuse is terrorizing. And this is a very dramatic one that involves verbal assault, threatening, making the child feel unsafe, creating a climate of fear. The fourth form of child abuse is ignoring. And this one can be very subtle. Basically, it's defined by the psychological unavailability to the child, depriving him or her of this essential stimulation. Number 5 is corrupting. And corrupting can be defined as stimulating any antisocial behavior, reinforcing this behavior. Number 6 is verbal assault or spurning, that, as the name says, we don't need to describe it in more details. And number 7 is overpressuring. And this is another type of emotional abuse that's very often observed in our society. And it can basically be defined as this increased expectation of the child's behavior and accomplishments. Criticizing, comparing, resulted in a negative self-image and behavior disturbance. The sequelae of emotional abuse may become evident only much later on in a child's life. Many scientific investigations describe the long-term sequelae of emotional abuse that include poor adaptation to adult life, low self-esteem, parenting difficulties, psychiatric disorders, substance abuse, suicidal ideation, depression, agitation, fearfulness, social withdrawal, running away from home, development delay, and eating disorders including anorexia nervosa and bulimia, and behavior changes including hoarding. The message that we want to leave with you today is that we have to do our part. First, we need to identify the problem. Most people do not even realize that they are actually emotionally abusing kids. Second part is that non-judgmentally we need to get involved and offer our help. And also we need to understand that very often both the child and the parents need help. We can help by prayer, by counseling, including discussions about Spiritism teachings regarding this matter, and when necessary involving healthcare professionals. Dear listeners, now we're going to end our show today with a little passage from the book The Gospel According to Spiritism by Allan Kardec. O Spiritists, you must understand humankind's grand role. You must understand that when you produce a body, the soul who incarnates in it has come from the spirit world in order to progress. Know your duties and put all your love in leading that soul to God. This is the mission that has been entrusted to you, and for which you will receive recompense if you faithfully fulfill it. God bless us.
We will return to our program after these messages.
Would you like to liberate yourself from your life struggles or to find inner balance? The Inner Journey CD has 3 beautiful visualizations that will help you bring harmony to your life. As Joanna DeAngeli tells us to, live in a way that you leave enlightening footprints in your pathway as if they were stars pointing out the pathway to happiness. To find this CD, go to the bookstore on the Spiritist Society of Baltimore webpage, www.ssbaltimore.org. That is www.ssbaltimore.org, and start your inner journey today.
Nourish your soul with Kardec Radio.
Available for purchase, the book Conception of God by Herculano Pires. In this book, Professor Herculano Pires writes about the impossibility to conceive nothingness and the logic of God's existence. Learn more by purchasing your copy online at www.sgny.org.
Save the date for the 6th U.S. Spiritist Symposium that will be held at the Rialto Center for the Arts at Georgia State University in Atlanta, Georgia on Saturday, May 12, 2012. This year's topic is Love and Enlightenment, a Pathway to Self-Healing. Come out and enrich your mind, body, and soul. For more info, go to www.spiritistsymposium.org.
And now we return to our program.
Good morning, dear Kardec Radio listeners, and welcome to another program of God at Home. I am Naur Fonseca.
And I am Gabi Ferreira. Today, you're going to use crayons and paper, so please go quickly pick them up while we wait for the beginning of the story.
In today's story, we are going to study how to balance our reason with our emotions in our family relations. We are going to learn how to use the tools of perfection as explained by the Spirit Neo Lucio through the mediumship of Chico Xavier in Chapter 6 of the book Jesus in the Home.
Okay, are you ready? Let's go.
Simon Peter was wearing a very sad face. After Jesus read from the sacred writings, he opened up in a conversation with the Master.
This afternoon I was offended by insensitive and ill-mannered relatives. My elderly uncle accused me of wasting family assets, and my cousin threatened to box my ears right there on the street.
And what did you do, Simon, in response?
Well, of course I reacted like I should have. I put them both in the proper place. I didn't hold back in pointing out their bad qualities. My uncle is a rare example of stinginess, and my cousin is a consummate liar. In front of a large crowd, I showed that both were hypocrites, and I'm not at all sorry for it.
Peter, what does a carpenter do when he is building a house?
Well, of course, he works hard on it.
How?
With tools.
Very well. The individuals we are born and live with while on earth are the first and most important tools that we have received from the Father for building the kingdom of God within us. They are elements for our spiritual growth, and if we fail to take advantage of them, it is nearly impossible to be victorious by using other means, because the Father has given life's problems on us according to our ability to solve them. The bird has to build a nest, but nothing else is expected of it. The sheep provides the wool, but no one expects a ready-made coat from it. Our closest family members are most often the hammer or the saw we can use in building the living and sublime temple by which heaven will manifest in our soul. While the mason uses his tools on the outside, it is up to us to use ours on the inside. On every occasion, the bad person is a challenge that puts our goodness to the test. The ungrateful person is a way for us to practice forgiveness. If we do not help the needy person who is right there beside us, how can we help afflicted persons who are far away? How can we devote ourselves to the Father who is in heaven?
Now that we have listened to the story, let's hand out the crayons to each member of the family and ask each person to write in the paper something that he or she can learn from a relative. Make sure to use a different color for each learned virtue, and in the end, you may be able to create your own rainbow of virtues that were only possible because of the lessons you learned from each other.
One thing that is remarkable in this story is the honesty with which Peter describes his impulsive reaction towards his relatives, arising from his yet uncontrolled instincts. Joanna de Angelis tells us that while it is true that good feelings can melt the ice of a rational logic, it is often the case that the coldness or aggressiveness of emotions require the vigilance of reason.
Head and heart must act together. Listen with your feelings and act with your reason, keeping the two in just the right proportion.
So, dear listener, as much as we enjoyed all these segments in the program today, we would like to send a special gratitude to Dr. Reinardy and all of the team at Kardec Radio for providing so much nourishment for our souls. It doesn't matter if you're not listening the program live. You can listen to it on demand and actually download it to your iTunes. You know, Allan Kardec, he was this visionary mind. Many researchers throughout the world researched on spirit phenomena. But what was the difference with Kardec? The difference was the day he was seated by the kitchen with his loved one, his wife, Amélie Boudet, and they talked about the teachings he compiled from the conversations in the research of spirit phenomena. And they both realized that they had to share it with the world. That decision made a difference. You may be asking right now why we're mentioning this. Because if Kardec had a pathological attachment to the teachings of the spirits and kept it to himself or his wife, we wouldn't be here today. So for us spiritists, and for those who want to bring the spiritist therapy to their lives, let us leave our selfishness every day by sharing all the resources we have. It's most likely, as the spirits predict, people will be often ungrateful. But who cares? As Mother Teresa said, at the end of our journey, it's always going to be between us and God and never between us and whomever else. So let us now pray from the bottom of our hearts. Kardec has taught us much with the prayers in chapter 28 of the Gospel according to Spiritism. But today, we invite you for a special prayer to all of us in the world who struggle with some form of attachment, because that is blocking our pathway to our true destiny. As said the spirits in the answer to Kardec's question 895, let us join our hearts and our minds right now, dear listener. Dear Lord of life, you've created us to progress. We right now are aware of some of the features inside of us we need to work upon. But it's likely we have many others that only the changes of our perception and our level of evolution will provide as true realizations of our imperfections. We thank you for you don't care about our imperfections. You care that we keep on progressing by being co-creators at higher levels. Dear Lord, we're truly grateful for these moments of sublime realizations, learning experiences. Thank you for giving us the physical, the emotional, the spiritual resources to being here together, learning, so we can love more and serve all the more. Dear listener, next week, as we're posting tomorrow on Kardec Radio's website, we already have the whole program for the next month. And you see it tomorrow starting April 1st. And it's not going to be Fool's Day for us. It's a reality. We're going to release it. And in a week, we're going to have our whole program in the first weekend of April dedicated to the campaign I Honor My Parents, supporting parents and educators in their mission. We're going to have here Dr. Randy Kale, another very compassionate psychologist on the website terrificparenting.com, who will help us empower parents with new insights. For the time being, may God bless us all, and may we multiply the teachings of today in good actions. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Kardec Radio, broadcasting live every Saturday morning at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Email us and share your comments at www.kardecradio.com. Until next time, we wish you many blessings.